I believe we are live. Believe so. Let me check it.
Yeah, it says we're live.
Yeah, we are live. Okay, that's cool. So what I was saying, Brandon, is yesterday I had I've been asked by one of my homies to come to a bar, and this bar I've been many times. It's a popping bar, and being a recovering addict, being a newly alcohol recovering addict, knowing that I don't need to drink too, I was super nervous. Like I damn near had an anxiety attack going to it because I've been in this environment before, like, and so I'm like, dog, Richard, you first off, you cannot have one drink. Not you can't play with this situation. And while I'm in there, I got all these thoughts going through my head, like, or people looking at me crazy. Maybe you can just have one drink, or maybe you can take one shot and you'll be okay. But I stood strong throughout, and I was there for like 3 or 4 hours, and it was like by the end of the night, and I didn't stay till 2. I had an excuse. Let me get on out of here. I had to go pick up my daughter. But by the end of before I left, I was kind of settled, not fully settled, but I was kind of settled because I had made it a couple of hours, like not having a drink, and I'm like, Richard, you can do this. You can do this. So by the third hour, I'm like, all right, I'm not really grooving like I normally groove when I'm full of alcohol, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a little bit settled in and like damn near ready to go. Like, all right, now I can go home and be a grown person instead of thinking where's the doggone after hours after this type stuff. You know what I'm saying? So leaving there and picking up my daughter and stuff like that. My daughter, she comes in because this is her first time going to a quinceañera. She's beautiful in her dress, and she I pick her up and she's excited. She's sweating and excited. She got her shoes off and she's like, "Dude, Dad, I was so crunk. I mean, my friend had left me. I was standing by myself, but then they start playing the right music and I'm dancing with everybody so crunk." And I'm just to the side, just looking at her like, yeah. So I done left the party game, and you trying to jump into the party game, huh? No,
He's in there going, Dad, you're sober enough to hear this story and remember
man.
it.
She says, "How was your night?" I was like, "No, I had fun, but I'm glad you had fun, baby. I'm glad you had fun." And she says, "Let's go to Taco Bell." I'm like, "All right, let's go home." I'm yawning. I'm like, man, oh my goodness, I felt so proud of myself. I was ready to hit the show today. I woke up at like 6:30 today. Like, man, I'm so ready to hit this doggone show because of what I did yesterday. To proving it to myself. I want to prove it to. I don't have to prove it to anyone else. I need to prove to myself that I am a recovering addict. You know what I'm saying? And that was huge for me to do, to be in an environment like that. Now, I would not suggest anyone do that, and I won't be doing that. But it can be done.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
That's
so we got 1 minute. We got 1 minute. Ah, thank you, big bro. Shout out to you, Ken. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate that.
good to have
Oh,
you with us.
I got a big friend. I got a big homie named Ken. He sent
Oh,
me a
okay,
message.
gotcha.
Okay, let's do this.
All
Let's
right.
do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. 4:59. Uh, uh. Anybody got 5 yet? Nope. All right. There we go. You are now tuned in to Recovering Addict. Appreciate you guys stopping by, check on us. How y'all doing out there? My name is Richard. I am a recovering addict. And we got my homie, of course, my big brother, our co-host, all the way in DFW, Mr. Brandon. And we got another another brother coming in and to help us to host this show and share his story, Mr. Ken Folsom, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Guys, we got a great show for y'all today. We appreciate you stopping by. Say what's up, Mr. Brandon.
Hey guys, what's going on? Certainly glad to have everybody here again this week. We wanted to start the show with just a quick thing, real quick. You know, 20 years ago yesterday, we had the attack in New York City, and many of you decided to defend this country. And we just want to say thank you for those of you that stepped forward for that. And 19 years ago yesterday, I also got into that fight as well. I was a federal officer with the Department of Homeland Security for a little over 10 years and dedicated my life to that same purpose. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone out there. I know that there's a lot going on right now with the situation with Afghanistan, and I know a lot of you that are retired or even still in the military are probably handling a lot of emotions right now. And if you're in the middle of that struggle, if it's spilling over into a struggle with addiction or the temptation to be struggling with that, I just want to say that we are with you and you're not alone. And I just wanted to make sure that we kind of addressed that before we got started. And we just want to thank everybody out there for your service to this country. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all. I really do.
Appreciate you.
Now, this show is episode 2, and it is called Self-Awareness. Am I an addict or not? Stop and think about that for a minute. Are you an addict or not? Now, me personally, years ago, I did not believe that I was an addict. I could not believe that I was an addict. It took literally about 13, 14 years for me to actually acknowledge the fact that I was an addict. And it took another couple of years for me to actually do something about being an addict. So we decided to create this show for those who are questioning that particular part in their life. If you've asked that question to yourself before, or if you've never asked that question and you watch this show, you may see some similarities in us, some things in us that may relate to you. And if it does, we encourage you. Go deeper down the rabbit hole. And if you find out that you are an addict, get help. It is serious. Brandon, are you an addict?
Yes.
Ken, are you an addict?
Absolutely.
Do you guys remember when you started to realize that you were an addict?
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
Can y'all elaborate on that? Let me see here. When I started to think I was an addict, I was doing stuff that are shameful. Like when you become an addict, a full blown addict, you actually start to do things that do not resemble who you were before you became an addict. And a couple of years ago, the stuff, and I can't go deep into it, but the stuff that I was doing was just shameful. And when you hear my story, you'll be able to see what it means to be ashamed of your own life, even owning a company and being a single father. The things that I did were shameful. This is, a couple of years ago. So to be in addiction for 13 years and to see it half of your life, it's real tough. Brandon.
Yeah. I think the hardest part for me with facing whether I was an addict was it had a lot to do with my identity and how I perceived myself. I mean, I just shared with you guys that I was a former federal officer with Department of Homeland Security for over 10 years. And it was during that career that I actually became aware of it. And didn't really talk to anybody about it. I kept that to myself, and I have been clean for years, but when you have this certain perception about yourself and other people have a perception about you, obviously that's something you don't really want to broadcast to anyone. It's, by the way, I have a problem.
Right.
So
Right.
in my early years, I was a dealer, a drug dealer, and never got caught. And that spilled over into me doing my own product and experimenting and going into a lot of different stuff, coke, meth, ecstasy, you name it, I was doing it. And, quite a few years later, I had my child and came to the revelation that even if I knew I had a problem, I needed to clean up my act. And so that was something that I did. But, you're always still in that recovery status. You always have that mind that is an addict's mind, and you have to always keep yourself in check about those kind of things. And
Right.
so I think that's definitely been probably the number one thing that's kept me at bay is knowing that I have a dependent and I need to keep my head clear.
Yeah, that'll help. That'll help. But you know what? When you're a full-blown addict, sometimes we don't care about
That's
anyone.
true. That's true.
And it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing. I need to give me a tissue box up here. Okay, I need to give me a tissue box up here because me personally, man, it's a sad thing, to think about my daughter and to think about, the days and the nights that I put her through my addiction. It's tough, but we're not going to get fully into that. I like what you were saying about the experimental part. That right there is something I want to elaborate on. Now, what we have here is I did some research. And I found using a few sources that there are stages of addiction. Okay. And one source that I love, it listed 4 stages of addiction. And the first one was experimentation. Now, I want to read to you guys something that I read from that, and then I'm gonna ask y'all a question. Okay.
And we do want everybody to share in the comment section about your first time that you remember doing experimenting. We definitely want to hear your feedback on that. So.
Please. Okay, so stage 1, experimentation. A candidate may view this instance of getting high as a one-time occurrence, but the first time can be what opens the door to a downward spiral of addiction. Okay, so I'm asking you guys, you two, can you recall your first time using a substance?
Yeah.
Can you?
Absolutely. When I was probably about 14, I took my first drink. Everybody at school was talking about it, like, oh, drinking is so great.
Yeah.
And I didn't hang out with a really good group of friends, but my parents had a liquor cabinet.
Oh, shit.
And so I would spend some nights, just drinking alone and going to sleep. And it wasn't long after that I just, up and stole one of my bottle of my dad's Vicodin. And
at 14,
I was probably 15 with Vicodin.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't, and it really fits that definition of experimentation that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I didn't really view it as a problem. It wasn't, just this amazing thing for me, and I was like, oh, it's mild, it's really nothing. I don't see what everybody gets so worked up about.
Right.
And that's kind of the dropping off point.
Man.
And you know what? I just want to add into something when you just said you didn't think it was a big deal.
That's all
we've talked about on the show is it's a shift of perception.
Yeah.
Is the whole goal of the show. And, culture and the mindset of what happens with teens, experimenting, getting, coming into their own, as they say, all that kind of stuff. That's something that tends to numb the senses and the alertness to having a self-awareness of having a problem. Because a lot of the time we just tuck things under that was just, just me being a teenager, just experimenting, getting an idea of things. I'm becoming an adult. I'm coming to my own. I'm getting my first drink, having my first this or first that. And a lot of times it tends to be culturally supported.
Absolutely.
Do that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And the reality is that a lot of people don't even have that self-awareness, that they are, equipped with an addict's mind, because not everybody is built that way.
Right.
Until you do that experimentation, you're not really going to know.
Right.
And then when you do know, you got to do something with that. You either got to come to your senses and have that self-awareness, or you may go down a path for a very long time before you even come to that awareness.
Well, check this out. What I believe and what I've noticed is a lot of times it starts. I'm a parent now. Okay. So a lot of times it starts with our parents. I mean, like, and I say I can't say anybody's parents bad, anybody's parents good, especially if the kid is like sneaking it. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times it starts with the people that are above us. Like, I mean, if my daughter gets into drugs, if my daughter gets into alcohol, and she goes down the path continually. Now, this is a kid. This is a child. So of course she's not going to have the perception that a person like us would have. But if I don't nip that in the bud, then that falls back on parenting. But we ain't gonna get on the parents though. We ain't gonna do that right now. We're gonna stick with the grown addicts. We're gonna come out of the experimental stage. I do remember when I experimented for the first time, and I was literally about to go to a club. That was just my life. I was about to go to a club, probably about 21, 22 years old. And I was in my homie's car, and he was with his girlfriend at the time. Now, my particular substance of abuse was ecstasy. Okay, so
Me too.
never trying ecstasy before. I remember him pulling out the bag, and he's from New York. He's like, "Yo, what's up, man? Have you ever tried ecstasy before?" You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, "Nah, bro, I never tried ecstasy." And my friend, who he was dating at the time, had never tried it before either. So me and her both, this was our first time. But he pulled the bag out, and I remember we took one apiece, and the only thing else I can remember from that night, which is weird, is we got so high and we did not go anywhere. We stayed in the car for probably about 5 to 10 hours. I don't know. and kept saying, "Man, this is really, really good. Oh, it's so good. Chewing gum. This is so good. Really, 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 really good. Smoking cigarettes." That's all I remember, man. Really, 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 really. You just do stupid stuff like that when you're trying ecstasy from the experimental side of things. Okay, it got worse. Bro, this is like 21, 22.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was that time where most people, if you're gonna try a drug and you try ecstasy in those days, you know what I'm saying? Most people try it at that particular time. I didn't know that I was setting myself up at that time for a hell of a life. But can you recall yours, bro?
Yeah, I do. I experimented some in high school, but mostly after I got out of high school was when I started dating this chick that she was a dealer, and she ended up being my supplier as I became a dealer, and she had given me ecstasy. And I remember just after a couple weeks, man, my life was a blur, and I was doing way beyond doing just ecstasy. I was doing everything under the sun, and doing drug runs and all that kind of stuff on the side, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
And what was tied into that as well was a very promiscuous lifestyle, where I became a sex addict as well. So there was multiple addictions just layered on top of each other, and I was chalking this up as being young and dumb, and didn't really acknowledge my mental status at that point, was not really self-aware of having an addicted personality.
Yeah.
And I ended up losing my apartment, losing my truck, ruining someone else's marriage because I was sleeping with my best friend's wife. At the same time as dating this other chick that was a dealer. And I ended up turning a bunch of my friends into addicts. We became their main supplier. There was a mess. I created quite a mess and destroyed a lot of lives in the process. And I don't even know where they are now, but I sure hope that, this was years and years ago, but I really hope that they found recovery and that no one was harmed beyond repair. And I think that's kind of what drives me to want to be a part of what we're doing here is, obviously helping people walk out of that lifestyle, because I understand a lot of people feel trapped in that. There are different parts of these 4 stages, and a lot of people just feel like, man, where would I begin? And of course, that's kind of what we're here for, is to show you how to begin. Get you a starting point at some point. You have to jump in somewhere,
Yeah.
And life can be such a blur, such a mess that you almost feel like there's no way to find a structure, no way to get started, and you feel like it's just too far gone. And that is certainly probably the, as they say, knowing is half the battle. And so if you can get to that place of knowing, you can start from there and obviously, listen in, and we'll give you, help and links. And, if you want to tell us what stage you think you're in, we would love to see comments in the comments section as well. If you want to reach out, definitely do that for our website, because this is what we're here for. We're here to
So I don't mean to cut you off, big bro.
No, you're
You
good.
there?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, you kind of broke up. I saw your face kind of was like paused for a minute. I was like, is he looking at me like, did he really just cut me off? Or was that a glitch in the actual computer? Okay. Stage 2, regular use and abuse. Okay, so this is what I read from that. The user finds that life is not as comfortable or satisfying without using the substance and begins to use it as a crutch for getting through everyday life. Okay. Question: when did you notice it becoming a crutch? For me, I am a musician, was a musician, still got music in me, still a musician. I noticed it when every time I would go into the studio or try to create another track or try to write another song, and I've created hundreds of them, if not thousands, I would need substance. And it made me so sad afterwards, because I felt like, man, Richard, you're not creative without the actual substance. And I needed it as a substance. That was before I needed it going out, because it got real bad. But that was the part where I noticed it becoming a crutch, when I started to write and use it and need it for music. What about you?
Yeah, a lot of the same. I started noticing it becoming a crutch when I could no longer, just everything was better high.
Yeah.
You got to go meet some family members. I'm probably gonna need something to get through this.
Right.
You got to go to work.
Right.
Work sucks. But substance make it better.
Wait a minute, you were high at work?
Oh, 100% of the time.
100%
of the time.
Oh, I want to know a few stories. He said 100%.
Oh, they'll come. But yes, so basically it was everything needed to be enhanced. Everything needed to be altered.
Oh, goodness. If you feel like that, if you feel like everything needs to be enhanced with some alcohol or with a substance or something like that, please seek recovery, because you are in stage 2. I'm moving forward to stage 3 right quick, Brandon. I'm going to hit you with this one. Stage 3 is dependency and tolerance. That tolerance, man. And whenever you get to the point when somebody is next to you and they're like almost drunk off of 3 shots, and you're going 9 or 10 shots, that's when your tolerance has gotten to the point where it's like, all right, man, you definitely need to get some help. And I'm laughing, but it is serious. No one's tolerance should be taking 10 shots of Patron and still going. Okay, your tolerance should not be that high. All right. But anyways, if you've got to that particular point, you may need to seek some recovery. We are not doctors. We are not counselors. We're just trying to bring the reality out to you because we are here for you guys. We don't want anybody to, go out and really do something where you regret. Anywho, so what I read from stage 3 is psychologically the user may start finding that situations that were manageable before have become unbearable while sober. Unbearable while sober. Brandon.
Yeah. I remember one situation where one of my coworkers, when I was an officer, actually, he had invited me out to go play poker with a group of his friends. And this guy was a pastor, by the way. He was the one that taught me how to play blackjack and how to play poker. And he invited me over, and I had brought beer with me, and I was drinking that night. And I drank and drank and drank and drank, and I was passing up all these guys that were drinking. They were quite a bit older than me. And I went to the bathroom, and I remember I was sitting on the toilet, and I puked my guts out, and it went all over my jeans, and everywhere in the bathroom. It was like a scene out of The Exorcist. It was horrible. And I remember taking my pants off, trying to wash them in the tub, and I kept throwing up into the tub as well, and then into the sink, into the toilet. It was going everywhere, and I was trying to clean it up with a bunch of paper towels and Kleenex and whatever else I could find. And they kept knocking on the door, Brandon, are you okay? You okay? And I was such a mess, and it smelled to high heaven. It was horrible. And I ended up leaving. And of course, it was a small group, so it was not like I was leaving a big party. It was like, this was obvious I was leaving. And I left there, and the next day, I remember he looked at me and he's like, at work, he goes, they said don't ever come back. And I thought about that at that time, that just showed how out of control
you were in there praying to the porcelain gods. That's what you were doing, bro.
Horrible. I mean, I did the same exact thing when my mom had flown into town one time, and we had gone to the bar at this hotel that she'd flown into, and right there at the airport. And I got so wasted, I lost track of where she was, and I was in the public bathroom of this hotel, and people were walking in, checking on me, and I don't even know how I got back to the room. It was horrible. I mean, those are the times when you come to the revelation that you've got a dependency problem. You've gone beyond the normal grabbing a drink with some friends. You've got to that where things are becoming blurred out. You've got memory loss. And you need help, and that was really probably. And those are the things that are very, very embarrassing. People laugh about that when they talk about their stories of getting drunk or whatever, but that is really a reality check of if you have gotten to the point of being out of control and losing your cognitive ability to live a normal life, you've got a problem. And there's a solution, but you've got to come to the revelation and square up with yourself, have that self-awareness, and say, I need to get some help, because that is the sign you are struggling with addiction.
So check this out. I'm thinking right now back when, when I first started doing ecstasy, normal people were taking 1 to 2, and I was normal. I'd never been normal since the day I was born. But when I first started, I would take 1, maybe 2, and this is the days, and we're not gonna go into the triple stacks and whatever. But I'm thinking, 5-6 years down the line, I'm still taking them, and I have friends that were taking them, and they would be good off of 1 or 2. And I jumped up to about 4 or 5. Okay. And this is when I'm clubbing in my when I go to the club at that particular time, everyone else was drinking. I'm like, screw drinking. I'm going there and I'm going to need some pills, and we're about to really turn this thing on up. So basically, and what happened for me, you know, I had a circle. So me, I'm like getting it to, you know, my friends now. My friends are, you know, popping them, but they're still good. They can handle 1 and 2, and now they're able to get home and go to sleep. When it started getting bad and unbearable for me, it's like, man, I'm like 5 or 6. Now I'm 7 in, and now I'm on my second day. I'm on my second day, and I'm like, I can't go to sleep now. So now I got to the point where I was like, you know, I had a girlfriend who taught me sedative, how to sedate yourself, which is very, very not safe. Okay. It is not safe at all. You need to let it come out of your body. But I decided, okay, because of her, I got into alcohol hard then, because it was, let me sedate myself, because now I'm on 6, 7 pills, and I've been up for 2 or 3 days now. And now I want to come down, and I come out of it. And now I got this big old bottle of alcohol. My friends will remember I would have bottles of alcohol, and I'm just shooting it. I'm just shooting bottles of alcohol, trying to sedate myself. And it worked. It was horrible, because now not only you're coming out of pills, now you got alcohol in your system, and the hangover for alcohol is tough.
And you're mixing uppers and downers in
yes,
your heart.
Bro. Yes, that's when it becomes. Yes, bro. Yes. So okay, so
Well, hang on, I want to interject something.
Yeah.
I thought you really hit the nail on the head. When you started talking about the tolerance. You know, if your tolerance gets to a point, like for me, I had a small circle of friends that I smoked with, and these were like your typical stoners.
Yeah.
You know, weed was life, man.
Yeah.
And there's one guy named Gerardo.
Yeah.
And we went out and smoked for a while, and I think we smoked like 2 blunts, and you know, who knows how many bowls out of the bong.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Man, I'm done." And I'm sitting here like, "What's wrong with you? Like, what do you mean you're done?" You know, and I feel like if you get to that point where nobody can match you, at that point I just wasn't getting high anymore. I was just getting
basically. I mean, now it's my tolerance with weed. Like I never. That was one thing. I never was a stoner. You know what I'm saying? Which I guess I would rather have been a stoner than what I was. But you know, and people would laugh at me like, "Oh, Richard, how did you take all of these doggone pills? But once you hit the weed one time," I'm like, man, I'm like super high for like not for hours, but like for like 30 minutes. Okay, we're getting into having too much fun about the stories. We need to come down a bit. Come down a bit. Okay. All right. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. All right. So stage 4 is the addiction stage. This is when you are an addict and you are a full-blown addict and moving in the addiction stage. And the sentence that I got from that was, less time is spent in self-contemplation, as most thoughts are centered on how to obtain the next high. So, and this question is tough. I don't know if you guys want to answer it. I may stay away from this particular question, but the question is, what would you do to obtain the next high? Please keep your stuff
Honestly, I never went to the extent of stealing or anything like that.
There you go.
I went to pretty extreme levels of manipulation. I would manipulate those around me.
That's good.
And spend a lot of time, you know, justifying my position as to why I needed to do this or whatever, you know. But I was very much a control freak along with being an addict during those stages. And I became, you know, as a dealer, I was very much the power guy, the guy that was keeping everybody else in line. And so I went to great extents to ensure that I was good to go. And I think that's probably part of the problem with addiction as well is manipulation becomes a part of who you are when you're an addict, very much, because and that's not a good. And it's also selfishness. An addict is a very selfish person, typically somebody that's constantly thinking about their own personal situation, their own needs. It kind of goes hand in hand with that. And when you're worried about yourself to the point of making sure that you're good no matter whatever cost it takes on other people, that is probably the most ultimate manipulation and selfish position you can get into. But a lot of the time it becomes the state you're in as an addict because you're in survival mode. You're thinking the only thing I can do right now is worry about taking care of this addiction. But at the same time, you're plowing through like a bull in a china closet. You're hurting everybody around you because you're in selfish mode, you're in self-preservation mode, and you really don't care what you got to do to get yourself that next fix. That's really what it boils down to. So I'd say that's probably stage 4 at its max, is when you're really hurting people around you, you're hurting yourself, you're doing whatever you got to do to manipulate people to get you in the position of your next fix. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And not to go too deep into, the things that I've done, for that next high, but there's definitely some embarrassing things, lying, of course, manipulation is probably the biggest, and driving, in the rain, late at night, 45 minutes to an hour to a drug dealer. And then how does it feel when that drug dealer is not answering that phone? Oh my God.
Yeah.
When they're not answering their phone. Oh my goodness gracious. And you've been sitting outside and you're like, dude, what's going on, man? And you're gonna sit there and wait. You will sit there and wait because they got you by the balls, bro. Okay, that's just being honest. So just a little bit of the the levels that one will go to get that high. Just think about that for a minute. All right.
People are dealers and
yeah. It's a tough life out there, bro. It's a real tough life out there for an addict, man. Hopefully, everybody who's listening, man, if you're experiencing things like this, if you are relating to anything that we've just talked about, please, just go down. Like I say, go down the rabbit hole and seek some counseling, seek some therapy, and if you find that you are an addict, which you could be, get some help. At this particular moment, we're going to go into our first story of the recovering addict, and we do appreciate you, Mr. Ken. We appreciate you, man. I know we kind of highlighted a few things, and a bit of your story is out now, but we just want to open this time up for you to kind of tell the audience a bit of your story, and if you could take it from wherever you want to start.
Okay.
All right.
So my name's Ken. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. Started at what I consider to be a very young age.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier, I started just on drinking and some Vicodin here and there. And my parents caught me with the Vicodin. They had my mom was putting some clothes up in my room and found the empty bottle of Vicodin, and I got into a lot of trouble for that. And so that was the last of the drugs I did while I was still in high school. But I had made it a point that I was gonna go to college and get that college experience. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew that I wanted to go out and party. I wanted to go out and join a fraternity. I wanted to, you've seen all the movies.
Yeah.
And I wanted all that. And And it didn't take me long. There was move-in day into the dorms, and that night I hit a Theta Chi party, and it was really off to the races. And
those parties were live, huh?
Absolutely. From what I can remember of them, they were great. So the first 5 minutes was fantastic.
and then what happened after 5 minutes? What do you mean the first 5 minutes?
After 5 minutes, it's anybody's guess.
Oh,
Gotcha.
So
I once I became the party drinker, it just wasn't quite enough for me anymore. And one of my fraternity brothers had said, "Hey, you wanna go smoke some weed?" And it had always been on my bucket list. It had always been one of those things that I wanted to do, and I was like, "Absolutely, I want to."
Yeah.
And so we did. And I think I fell in love with weed more than I did alcohol. I never really enjoyed alcohol. I didn't like the throwing up, the spinning, and all of this. But weed now, that was something I could get behind.
Yeah.
Everything's just hilarious. Food just tastes better.
Yeah.
It's great. It's cheap. It's easy to get, and it was. I just absolutely fell in love with it, and I started not going to class anymore because I had found what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
There was this old dirt road that another smoker had shown me, and I would start my day by going to go pick up an eighth or half ounce, and then I would go back to the dorms, pick up a group of friends in my car, and we would just go drive down that road smoking.
Yeah.
And then once we were done, I would bring them back, drop them off, pick up another group of friends, and then do the same thing. I was basically a tour guide for that country road. And it wasn't long after that I picked up my first drug charge, and it was 421. It was 421. I'll never forget it. And it was a very miserable experience. I was scared to death.
421.
421.
So I had to put that in my head. So the day after 4.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I had picked up a half ounce for 420. I was going to celebrate, but I had to work late into the night. I think I smoked just a gram out of it, and I went to sleep. And then the next morning, I woke up to go do my tour guide routine, and I got pulled over. So that was that. So I'll never forget that. And I got my first charge. Absolutely miserable experience. And I got what's known as a pretrial diversion. If you complete your probation, they'll just basically drop all the charges. You're free to go scot clean. And I completed my probation, and 2 or 3 charges later, this cycle continued for a while. I wasn't done.
Yeah.
I had found this great thing, and it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
It wasn't a problem for me. And the cops, they were a problem. If they would just leave me alone, everything would be great. And
yeah.
So when I was in college, before I was invited not to return, I tried mushrooms for the first time, and it really opened up alcohol really opened up a whole new door for me. Alcohol opened me up to weed, which opened me up to mushrooms. And mushrooms were great. Not what I was expecting, with the pink elephants and the dragons guarding the refrigerator. But it was fun. It was a very fun experience, and I had to have more.
Body high?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Body high and
I couldn't stand it.
And mental high.
Yeah.
No, the hallucinations weren't as grand as I was expecting.
Yeah.
But it really threw my ADHD into overdrive. My girlfriend and I we would spend. She would say, "Order a pizza." I was like, "Okay," and I would go to do it. And sort of like there were time loops. We would go through. I would go to order the pizza and we'd get sidetracked on something else, and she'd be like, "We need to order the pizza." I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Yes, we do."
Yeah.
And on and on and on and on. And So I ended up picking up, five or six charges for drugs. Had to leave that town because it was a small town in East Texas, and I was convinced. I was still convinced it was the cops.
Yeah,
You can't do anything in this town. They're out to make their quotas, and so I moved down here to Houston,
Yeah,
and my addiction followed me
yeah,
because I carried it with me.
yeah. The cops followed you too.
Absolutely, absolutely, and they have a habit of that. And so I moved down here to Houston, and I was determined that I was still going to do my thing. I had made so many promises to myself. After my first arrest, I am never doing that again. After the second arrest, I am never doing that again, and on and on and on and on and on. But I was still doing the same thing,
Of course.
and I was shocked when I was getting the same results.
Yeah.
And a few more different drugs later, you had ecstasy, acid, Adderall, a few pills here and there. The pills weren't my thing. I always enjoyed more of just a slap you in the face high.
What does that mean? What is? Let me think about this right quick. Slap you in the face high, Brandon. What does that mean?
I don't know.
I think you might have to elaborate on slap you in the face high.
Okay,
bro.
so for me, when I was taking pills or kratom when I was on probation, I had a hard time telling that I was high. It was sort of just this thing in the background, like, yeah, I'm in a better mood, but I'm not just like.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I gotta be.
Yeah, you gotta
not
be
functioning.
You gotta be. Okay, gotcha. Got slap you in the face high. Coin that one. Gotcha.
No, we're not coining those kinds of things on this show.
Oh, my bad. All right.
So, anyway, so many drugs and many charges later.
Yeah.
I had decided that I needed a job. I kept getting fired from all my jobs. Kept calling in sick. Eventually, they found out that I wasn't sick because if somebody who had called in sick as much as I had would have died by then. And I was talking to my dealer, and he was like, "Well, why don't you just start selling weed?" I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." Why didn't I think of that? I have unlimited drugs, I have money, and I'm gonna be the Pablo Escobar. I'm gonna have a Cadillac,
and the cops are following you.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that you can't really get rich doing that if you're your own best customer. And so
they call it what? Don't get high on your own supply. That's what they call it.
Absolutely, but never understood that phrase. But anyway, so I ended up selling. Half an ounce to an undercover cop, and I caught my first felony.
Really?
Absolutely. And I caught my first felony charge, delivery of marijuana. And everybody I talked to, they're like, "Okay, that's the time. That's the point where you were like, I'm done."
Right.
No, it wasn't. Right. Absolutely not. I got out of jail, and I was on probation, and I did everything I could, everything I knew about, everything Google knew about to duck my UAs and my probation officers. And if I couldn't get around the drug test, I just wouldn't show up that day. I'd tell them, "Oh, I went to the lab, but it was locked. I don't know."
Yeah.
And I was still smoking. And one day, I was on my way back from buying some weed. It was weed that time. And I got pulled over. And went through the whole thing. I had been through the process so many times. I knew it was let me search your car, and like, yeah, okay, go ahead. It's over here.
Yeah.
And went to jail, and I was coming out of jail. I'd been bonded out, and I was taking that long walk to the bondsman's office. And I don't know if you've ever seen Sergeant York, but I had that lightning bolt moment. I'm doing this again. Mm-hmm. Like I said I was never going to do this again, and yet time after time after time, here I am. Like I am not in control of myself. Yeah. When your car has autopilot, when when you wake up in the morning saying, okay, today I need a tolerance break. You know, I'm gonna not smoke for a week and then, you know, go for it. And then by the end of the day, you're waiting in the parking lot for somebody to bring you your drugs, and you're like, wait, how did they get here? Like I never made I never made a conscious decision like, oh, I'm gonna go get it for this and this reason. I just appeared there with a cash in hand, ready to go. And I wasn't in control of my life anymore. My addiction was running me. And I had the lightning bolt moment that, you know, you're here again. This is going to be your life from now on. If this is what you continue to do, you're going to continue to, you know, stay in jail for longer and longer and longer times. They're eventually just not going to give you bail, you know, because you're going to be in prison. And so my probation officer had suggested highly that I attend an IOP SOP program, intensive outpatient program, before this, and that wasn't part of the terms of my probation. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, I don't need to do that. You know, I knew I had a problem, but I didn't want to do anything about it. I was convinced that, you know, it wasn't that bad. Again, you know, if everybody would just leave me alone, we'd be all right. But and at the same time, I was doing this creative accounting. I was a fantastic accountant for my affairs. You know, my car note's due on this day, but I have like a 2-week grace period. So if I get paid this day, I don't have to pay them. I can spend this money on drugs, and, you know, I don't have to eat, you know, breakfast or lunch for, you know, this amount of time. And ended up having to choose between drugs and food most days, and we all know which one wins that fight.
Of course.
And so this lightning bolt moment, I couldn't do it anymore. I knew I wasn't in control, and I had to do something about it. And I had tried white knuckling it before, and I knew that wasn't the answer, because I was just going to figure out any way I could to rationalize it to myself that you know, that I didn't have a problem, that I could just go back to the way things are. And I decided to try something. I was gonna do this IOP SOP program, and I got there, and I was determined. Like, I was going to be the most difficult person I could, not to be obstinate, but because I needed help. I needed, like, the straight answers. You know, my thinking was that they see a lot of addicts in that program, a lot worse people than me. They know the answers, so I need to be as difficult as possible so that I get all the answers. You know, any questions I have, no matter how stupid, they have an answer for it. Right. You know, and the most important thing I got from that program was probably a question that was asked of me. Don't you want to know why you don't feel comfortable sober? And I had never thought about it like that. I was like, I'm not comfortable sober. I have this itch inside me that I have to go have something to alter my mood, to alter my thinking. And so I went through that program, and they referred me to a 12-step program, which I still attend. And I got all the answers that I needed. I got all of the peace that I was after. You know, I was free from just needing to find somewhere to scrounge up $20, to scrounge up $50. I didn't have to do that anymore. I wasn't a slave to my addiction anymore. And it was the best thing I've ever done in my life. Second best thing.
Second best thing.
Yes.
Well, can I ask what the first is?
Absolutely. I got married.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Bing.
Absolutely.
Hey, Rich, real quick, I just want to interject something real quick here, Rich. Can you check and make sure the feed is running smooth? I'm seeing a lot of freezing up. So
yeah. I've been checking. I've been getting
something.
I've been getting comments on it. It's we'll get it right, but it's streaming good.
So when did you start your recovery, Ken?
I started it immediately after the quote unquote lightning bolt moment, because I knew from previous experience that if I rested on my laurels, that I would rationalize it away, and that if I was going to actually do something about it, I needed to strike while the iron was hot. I needed to do something about it right then, or else I would go home and I would smoke, or I would drink, or I would get high, and it would go away. All of my problems would vanish. So to appear.
Yeah.
And so I got started on it immediately.
Good.
I knew if I waited, I wouldn't do anything about it.
And what was that? What was that like going through, the recovery process? I mean, what was entailed in that?
So the first step of my recovery process was actually done before I started. The first step was to admit that I had a problem and that I couldn't do anything about it. And once I started attending 12-step meetings and actually working to do something about it, it was a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, because I didn't have to be in control of just every single thing anymore. I didn't have to scrimp and scrounge and save to see if I could collect all the money necessary to go feed the addiction, to feed the beast. I was free to live my life the way I wanted, not the way that I was being ruled to do so.
Yeah. So you started getting control back, as opposed to the substance having control of you.
Yes and no. I got control back by giving up control. Part of my issue was that I needed to be in control of every single thing. I needed to have my hands on the steering wheel. I needed to be in charge. And once I gave up that role of being the director or the guy in charge, I had a lot less stress and a lot fewer urges to use. And that's how I gain control, is by giving up control. It's a paradox, but it's a beautiful one.
So when you started getting into that program, I'm understanding now that you're actually sort of in a leadership role now, correct?
Sort of, yes. I chair meetings from time to time. I group representative for my home group. So yes, I try to do as much service work as I can, because service work keeps me sober.
And what is the name of the role that you are? I remember you told me, and I don't remember what it was.
Alternate group service representative.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm sure as you've been in this program, you've seen a lot of things from different members that have joined, where you've probably seen some things, some pretty rough stuff. Looking at other people walk out what they're doing,
Yes, sir.
Not just their own story, but others, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and for those, I take those as a lesson too. I find that most things in life are about how you look at them and how you take them. When I see people go back out, or who are still in active addiction, I see it as, hey, that could be you. Like you're walking on the edge always for life. One misstep and you're that guy, and you may never climb back onto the cliff.
So you don't find watching that and going through that as emotionally draining, but more of a reminder to you to keep your head in the game, and for yourself and for those people to support them and say, we got to get through this, because we're all one step away from going back to that old way again. So you see that as encouraging to be exposed to those kinds of things in a way.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. One of the things I heard, I think it was in my second or third meeting, it was, we will no longer regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. And it was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard in my life. There was nothing more in the world I wanted to do than forget all of my past mistakes, and to forget where I had come from and what I had done. But I realized going through it that the reason for that is so that you don't forget what's behind that door. Because once you open that door and go through it, you may not come back. It's there to keep you in check. It's there to keep you on the beam.
Right. Absolutely. If you could size up the process of recovery into one word, and that's a tough one, but into one word, what would you size it up as?
Freedom. Pure and
Freedom.
simple. Yeah, absolutely. It is the purest freedom I have ever known. It's freedom from myself, freedom from this demon inside me that wants to kill me.
Interjecting on that, I got my daughter a dog a couple of years ago, and for my recovery, to help me remember that every single day that I was in recovery, I named my dog Freedom. So that hits home. Good job.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. So I got a couple questions here I wanted to ask you, Ken. For those family members and friends out there that are listening to this show and that know people close to them that are going through this process, what advice would you give them?
My advice would be to when you're ready to do something about it, like the very second that you realize, hey, I should probably do something about this, you need to do it. Because as I mentioned earlier, for me at least, if I had waited, then I wouldn't be here right now. I would still be out there running around carrying on and probably looking for bail money. When you're ready, and when you find that you have the thoughts that you need to do something about it, you need to do it. Like that window is not going to stay open forever.
So that would be for the person that is walking through that. But I guess I mean is like, what would you say to the family members and friends that are watching others that are hitting that aha moment? Do you have any advice for them as they're watching this to, like you said, as soon as you become aware? So how would you advise them to handle that person that's dealing with addiction in their life, that they're around? Do they say something? Do they, well, that's a hard one, I know, because everybody's different. Everybody has different, characteristics, and family dynamics are always different, but
right. I can answer it in a general sense.
Somebody out there that gets concerned,
Right. I can answer it in a general sense. My advice would be to have patience. Have patience, but don't enable. We don't. Addicts don't need your help becoming addicts or staying addicts. But be patient. As far as saying something about it, you can try. Don't expect it to work. I went through several court-ordered programs. I've been to more drug and alcohol classes than I can remember. The courts and my parents both, and all of my family members have tried desperately to tell me, like, hey, you need to get sober. Like you gotta cut this out. You have to do this. And I wouldn't listen. It was part of me because I didn't believe that it was a problem. And it really has to come from within the individual themselves. I know that sucks. I wish somebody had been able to just tell me and sit me down and be like, hey, like, you're going down a road that doesn't end well. And I would have had the clarity of mind and the self-awareness to listen. But the fact is that I didn't, and most people don't. The desire has to come from within the person themselves. They have to want to do it. If they don't want to do it, you not to be cliche, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink from it.
Right.
They have to want to drink it. Or they have to want to be sober, because in the end, if they don't want it, they're just going to do it for the amount of time it takes to get people off their backs, and then they're back out to break. Yeah,
to relapse
100%.
over and over.
So my advice to family members and friends is be patient. It is a sickness. It is a sickness for the most part that It really is, and it can be tough. I know that I pushed a lot of people away. I know that a lot of people got real tired of me. But patience, and you can say something if you want to, if you feel like it will help. By all means, do it. But don't be surprised if it doesn't work or if it doesn't sink in, because
There's a
we
lot
are.
of people out there that struggle with this in their family, and I know of moms and dads and brothers and sisters out there that have been dealing with it for years, husbands and wives, and there comes a point, I think, that a lot of them ask that question: when is it okay for me to put up a wall, a guard between me and that person with the addiction? Because they keep crossing that line, and it's a tough one, because a lot of them, they have love for that person, but like you said, you're not necessarily going to be successful trying to convince that addict that they need to do a change. It has to be their own personal desire, or it's just that other person's desire being trying to transfer it to that addict. And that addict
100%.
truthfully is not mentally there, emotionally there, at the same state of the person that sees it as an observer status. So, I think, I don't know, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think, I would say it's probably okay to put up a wall at the point of when it becomes harmful, obviously, for those family and friends that are dealing with it, wouldn't you say? I mean, there has to be a certain amount of distancing from that if it's spilling over into affecting people and hurting people.
Absolutely.
Until the person has help,
Absolutely. Boundaries and walls are a great effective tool for friends and family members, not to lock people out, but
Right.
an addict by nature, if we cross a line and you move the line further back to give us leeway, we're just going to cross that line until the line stops.
Right.
We're gonna. I would have taken advantage of every situation that you presented me. I would have just kept going and see how far I can push the envelope. So draw a line and keep it there. Don't move it. You shouldn't have to compromise. Sober people and friends and family members shouldn't have to compromise their security and their feelings and their well-being because of the addict. And
because it's not their addiction, and they shouldn't feel that shame or that fear or that worry. Obviously, they still care about that person, but there has to be a separation where they're not living out the shame with that other person.
Absolutely. If the addict keeps coming to you as needing money or needing this or needing that, and you keep giving it to them, then you become an enabler, and you, not to say you're partly responsible for them, but you're not helping them at all.
Not at all.
Yeah. And when was that? I think you just said it earlier. When was your aha moment of self-awareness, when you reached that point where it was like, you said, a lightning bolt situation that happened with you? What was that again? You said
I was walking from the jail to the bondsman's office for, it had to have been the 9th, 10th, 11th, somewhere in their time, and realizing that, hey, this is a familiar walk. You said over and over again you weren't going to do this, and yet here we are again. And if you don't change, it's going to be the same thing in a few months.
Yeah. Throughout the process of walking through recovery, have you found a particular favorite part or method of that process of overcoming addiction that has helped you the most? What has been your favorite part of that process that you found the most effective?
Nothing insures against the first drink or drug like working with another addict. You got to get out there. You need to. You have to go to meetings. You have to help people. You got to get out of your cheap self. You have to stop being selfish, self-centered, and fearful. You have to help people. You have to get out of yourself and going to meetings, talking to people.
Not secluding yourself, basically, because that's what we want to do, to seclude ourselves, right?
Absolutely,
time.
and that's the most dangerous place to be. My sponsor says, if you're home alone with a killer, and it's your mind. I have a disease that actively tries to kill me. And when you're working with other people, because I believe that most addicts are just like you said, they want to be reclusive, they want to keep to themselves. But if I had to boil it down to one single thing, get out of your comfort zone. Start doing things that you weren't doing. If you want to change your behavior, then you need to start by changing it. I know it sounds obvious, but if you're going to meetings and you're scared to do some sharing, then you need to share.
Right.
You need to that's the first step. Like take a step out of your comfort zone, and then you'll realize it's not the end of the world. And it sometimes it even feels great sometimes, and then you can make the next step and the next step and just keep walking out of that hole.
Calling that shedding the shame.
That's shedding the shame. That's another episode.
That's shedding the shame. Man, it's been great. This has been great.
So good.
Great.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, bro.
Thanks for having me. It was an honor. This is
appreciate it. It's been awesome. Guys, thank you guys for watching The Recovering Addict. You can reach us on social media at The Recovering Addict Life. That's Facebook. That is Instagram. That is YouTube. And you please visit our website, www.therecoveringaddict.life. Stay tuned for next week. We got another story coming for you. We're out of this thing. Hey, please remember, you are not alone.
Thank you guys. Y'all have an awesome weekend, and we'll see you next week.